Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Digital Studio. So it's a great pleasure to be with you again for the latest in our e-commerce world review sessions. And today we have a sneak preview. The ink isn't yet approaching dry on our latest brands and marketplaces report. So to put this in context, we've been studying marketplaces and the use of marketplaces by retailers for a number of years. And we have our marketplaces report and we have our top retailers report. But we haven't looked at that intersection of how brands and marketplaces work together and are developing together. So that's the report. We're very excited to have it out with you. And I think it'll be out on something like the 13th, but don't hold me to it. No worries, though. We will send you the link so that you enjoy it. But for today, we have a sneak preview. And in the studio, we've got some lovely guests who are going to help us look at the issues that we've identified, the opportunities, as well as give some of their extensive insight on the move by brands and marketplaces to work together more effectively. So I will just show the lovely guests. Welcome everyone to the studio. I'll ask you in a second to introduce yourself and your company, but before we go any further, it's admin time. So I know everyone is totally au fait with video calls, Zooming, left, right, and center. So as usual, if you've got any questions, depending on where your menu bar is, drop us a question. I'll try and weave those in. But if we don't get a chance to answer them, we'll follow up later. If you're shy, just drop us your question to research@retailx.net, and we'll look at that and get back to you. And of course, this is ongoing research. So no sooner will we publish this than we'll carry on with the research. So if there are topics you'd like us to cover, areas of focus, or you'd like to volunteer to chat with us to explain how you're approaching brands in marketplaces, we'd love to hear from you. As ever, research@retailx.net. So without further ado, it's time to welcome our lovely guests. So let's kick off with you, Emma, then Sean, then Martin. Emma, tell us who you are and where you're from.
Hi there. So I'm Emma Cole. Nice to be with you all today. So I'm joining you from Miracle. I've been at Miracle working with our marketplace operators, helping them grow, scale, and evolve their marketplace businesses. And of course, amongst that, we also work with a huge number of sellers within our Miracle ecosystem. So I'm excited to share some of those insights and stories with you today.
Great. Well, look, welcome to the studio. It's been a pleasure working with you on the research as well. Sean, welcome to you as well. Tell us a bit about you and your company.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name's Sean. I'm one of the account executives here at Channel Advisor. And Channel Advisor is a SaaS-based e-commerce platform where we connect brands and retailers to multiple different marketplaces or digital marketing feeds. And in my role, I generally work with brands and retailers and helping them navigate their online journey here in EMEA and across the pond as well in the US.
Well, that's great. Welcome, Sean, and look forward to getting more of your expertise today. Lastly, but not leastly, Martin, tell us who you are.
I'm Martin Shaw, Head of Research at RetailX. My team and I work on the metrics and the benchmarks that we use to assess retailers and brands and marketplaces across Europe and around the world. And so we put a lot of work into this report.
Great. Well, look, we look forward to hearing that. So I think, Martin, let's just start with you, and I'm going to put you into the seat of power so you can take us through the report. I'll drive, so if you just tell me when you're ready for next slides, we'll take it from there. But we can't go any further without saying what an amazing cover this is. So with that said, over to you to take us through it.
Thanks, Ian. Credit to the designer for the cover. So this report, we assess the largest brands in Europe and we look at how they're using marketplaces in particular. We also look at how consumers are navigating to get to what they want to buy, whether they're using marketplaces, brands, or other retailers. So I'll go through a few slides, and you're one step ahead of me there, Ian. So this chart here, this figure 1, shows the proportion of retail web traffic that goes to brands in the most significant sectors. Nearly half of the visits go to fashion retailers, followed by those in the consumer electronics sector. So this one is kind of like a pie chart. It's showing the proportion of brands where they're headquartered. So obviously we look at all brands wherever they're headquartered based on their significance to European consumers in this report. However, we find that most of the brands come from just a few countries in terms of where they're headquartered. The most, I should say, are headquartered in the UK, 31%, and then the United States, 22%. Skip to the next. So this chart shows the distribution of web traffic. You can see it split between brands, marketplaces, and retailers. On the left, we've got the British consumers navigating to the websites of the UK top 500 retailers. And on the right, we've got pan-European consumers navigating to the websites of the Europe top 1000. So working from left to right, we can see that of the total 100% of web visits to the UK top 500 from British consumers, 12.7% went to brands, 55.0% went to marketplaces, and 32.3% went to retailers. The significance of marketplaces is even more pronounced in the chart on the right, where we see that the web traffic of European consumers as a whole, the marketplaces receive 60% of that. Although Amazon and eBay are slightly less dominant in the pan-European market as they are in the UK in particular.
So I love this pair of charts, but it's a pretty chart that says a rather high impact state of affairs with this dominance in the customer's minds and behavior of marketplaces. 50% is big enough, but pan-European at 60% is an extraordinary number. So Emma, any surprises here? Is this peak marketplace or just a step on the way to total marketplace?
I think it shows just how much customers are choosing to shop where they find interesting products, where they are finding retailers that they can engage with and that they find interesting, and where there's an interesting selection of products that appeal to them. It's not really surprising to see that there's more dominance across marketplaces in Europe because there are more mature markets throughout France and Germany. But it's interesting as well to see in the UK how that is still quite a significant amount. So it's not surprising to see, but it's an interesting call to action perhaps to brands and retailers to see where their customers may be going and to make them maybe be a bit more aware that the space that they could be moving into to meet those customers where they're running off to.
Mm-hmm. And of course, on the marketplaces, the thing that people are often searching for are the brands themselves. So it's as if the brands are already on the marketplaces, but maybe as the as the first party, but maybe unwittingly. Sean, how do you see this? Because in the decades we've known of you, you've been at the forefront of helping people go from their own inventory to pumping things out onto the marketplaces. Again, same question. Do you think this is where it's going to settle, or is this just a step on the way to a larger marketplace position?
Yeah, certainly. So Channel Advisor has been around for 20 years, and always with the view that more and more channels would become more relevant, and that's where with the rise of Amazon and eBay that we would see something similar happen across in Europe. It's not surprising when you consider that this report is really just an aggregation of consumers like us. And if I think about how I shop, it's, I'm looking for deals or the best delivery. I want it delivered tomorrow. I want it delivered within 2 days, ideally. And you're always looking for ease of purchase and frictionless purchase. So if you've got your card details saved within Amazon, as an example, it just makes that process so much easier. What we're seeing now is that, particularly in the UK, we've got the rise of OnBuy and another marketplace, and the growth figures that they keep speaking about. But what's interesting to note is that you're seeing Allegro and Zalando pop up there in that marketplace section as well, which is, previously it was always about the big two, the juggernauts, Amazon and eBay, but there is a long tail that's coming to the party these days, and those are just one of I suppose those are just two of many that are coming up, and we're starting to see it as well with a lot of Merkel's customers when you're seeing the Decathlon, whooping up their marketplace as well. I think it's only, as consumers, we want choice, and we want we want options.
Yeah,
and that's what we're being given these days, and I think it'll only continue.
So before we move on, and I'm laying myself open to correction by better informed people, so please tell me in the comments. An impression I had, if I go back 10, 12 years, was the UK was quicker to adopt e-commerce, the retailers now, than were the major continental retailers, which, if you like, opened a space for the marketplaces to seize the direct-to-consumer initiative. So I think that's reflected in the dominance in Europe compared to the UK. So I think my question is, do we think that as retailers and brands become more innovative themselves, that they will take some of that traffic back from the marketplaces, or do we think that this is an irrelevant point and the marketplaces are going to continue as the primary selling platform? Emma, do you want to answer or dismiss my question as you think appropriate?
Well, I would say that a lot of those brands and retailers, instead of seeing marketplaces as a threat, they can look at those business models and see the opportunity that they offer, because those brands and retailers already have their own huge websites that drive an enormous amount of traffic. So why not grasp that and take advantage of that traffic and that good reputation with customers, and use that marketplace model yourselves to beat the rest at their own game? There are, if you're an incredibly well-known retailer in the UK and you want to entice customers with a bigger selection, more interesting range of prices and new categories and new opportunities to offer more to your customers, the marketplace model is the exact way to be able to do that easily and quite flexibly, and not have to lose ground to those other players who are popping up.
Okay, that's great. Well, let's continue then, Martin. So I interrupted the flow there. Back to you.
No, that's brilliant. All relevant points. So this final chart that I was going to show is it shows that a wide range of brands ranked in the index can be sold on the leading marketplaces. 95% of the brands are sold on eBay and 88% on Amazon. The fact that they're sold, however, doesn't mean that it's the brand itself doing the selling. In fact, in most cases, we found that it was either unclear whether it was the brand itself doing the selling, or it was clearly an alternative. The next one, this rather dense table, shows year-on-year change in the absolute number of web visits to marketplaces by country. So I won't go through it every row, of course, but the overall trend is that marketplaces this year are receiving more traffic than they did last year. And a particularly interesting point is that the countries which are responsible for the most traffic, were responsible last year for the most traffic, are also the most likely to have increased in the past year. So,
positive feedback loop.
It doesn't look like a plateau, I suppose, is the point that you could say there, that it looks like it's
very interesting. So, Sean, I want to loop back to you quickly because you mentioned, or we mentioned earlier on, Zalando and Allegro. So, tell us a little bit about the drive to put your products onto more marketplaces. So if you're not running your own marketplace, beyond the big two, there's a wealth of specialist, fast-growing, country-level marketplaces. How easy is it to go? Say Emma and I had our own store at the moment. We thought, do you know what? We need to go and trade in Poland or join Zalando. What's the process? Is it, you can tell us we just press a button and it just happens?
Certainly not for the two that you've mentioned. There's definitely hurdles that brands will have to overcome, but it's certainly worthwhile. When you consider Zalando, it's only going to be relevant to you if you're selling in the apparel and fashion kind of sector, and it's the biggest fashion marketplace in Europe, and I'd almost say worldwide, because there's no one else quite doing it like Zalando. So if you're a brand selling in fashion, to be present on Zalando is the modern day version of the high street. Essentially, it's where all brands are going. It's where consumers are going to look for new trends and shopping. But there is major considerations at stake when it's a German company, and you'd have to have German VAT and be registered as a business over in Germany, especially for UK customers. And after Brexit, the logistical nightmares, I suppose, or paperwork that's involved now is you need to be able to split your stock. So being able to send stock over to Zalando's warehouse. But the great thing about Zalando, similar to Amazon, is that they have their own logistics network. So they've got ZFS, which is their fulfillment services, where they can fulfill your stock. But there certainly is a more rigorous process and data requirements for their marketplace. And then if you look at Allegro in Poland, one of the fastest growing marketplaces and territories out there today. It's a massive market, and the reason being in each territory, I suppose, Amazon isn't always the biggest, or eBay isn't always the biggest, and I think people have an affinity to what's domestic to them and what they know. So in the Benelux, it might be bol.com. In Germany, it may be Amazon or Otto, but in Poland and that kind of Eastern European bloc, it's certainly Allegro. And key consideration there is, do you have Polish translations? Once you get over that hurdle, do you have a logistics solution, or do you know how to market to the consumers in that particular geography? So
I'm trying to work out, Sean, whether you are glass half full or glass half empty on this. You're definitely half, because normally we'd be saying, there's a great opportunity. You mentioned the Brexit word first, so thanks for bringing us into that territory again. But we would say, post-Brexit, we have to be looking internationally and to get back into the European markets. So we would normally say marketplaces are a great way to go. You've sounded a note of caution, though, that they are selective, they have quality assurance for onboarding, and that fundamentally it's not just a case of sending a feed. We have to prepare for the logistical and administrative side as well.
Absolutely. So, it's marketplaces is Channel Advisor's core business, and I think it's a massive opportunity. But there has to be a word of caution in there, because it's not as simple as just listing, and it's not as simple as just creating your own marketplace. There has to be a strategy behind that. There's so much opportunity out there. And it's important for brands to really unpick what their roadmap and strategy is. Yeah. So if you're a fashion brand launching on, eBay and bol.com and Allegro, may not be the smartest move instead of going straight for Zalando. It's where you're going to get the most return on investment for your focus and energies and investment as well.
Okay, well, look, you've sort of set us up very nicely for our remote guest. So although it's obviously not fun that we're not together in a studio, one of the benefits is that through the teleportation powers through time and space, we're able to have a quick chat with Victoria from Hotter Shoes. Now, Victoria has does some incredible things at Hotter, really, and the brand itself is on a major growth spurt. So we profiled Hotter and their marketplace activity, but it's always better to hear directly. So we caught up with Victoria earlier and looked at the journey that Hotter's been on, both to use the UK dominant marketplaces, but develop a broader strategy, how it fits in with their own direct-to-consumer activities as the brand moves more and more to be an online-first business. And of course, she picks up on Zalando, where they are just listing. So it's a great opportunity to hear a brand that very much is at the stage that Sean's been talking about. So let's just hear from Victoria now.
Thanks for having me, Ian. Hi, everybody. I'm Victoria Betts. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Hotter Shoes. Hotter is targeting largely 55 plus female audience in the comfort footwear sector. We were actually founded back in 1959, so our transformation is quite unrecognisable, and we've certainly used the 2020 pandemic to accelerate our transformation. We're now firmly positioned as a digitally driven and data optimized business. So over 80% of our turnover comes online, be it our direct consumer site or indeed through our partner brands. Over the years, I think marketplaces have become destinations simply because of their assortment and huge range. So if we look at Amazon and eBay, there are many consumers who trade with those and shop with those as part of their regular shopping repertoire. For Hotter, we've chosen to partner with both of those two global marketplaces, both Amazon and eBay. And the reason for doing so is twofold. Firstly, their enormous reach and brand equity. So in a way, for brands like ourselves who are smaller, we benefit from the marketing dollar that those brands are prepared to spend and the equity and the trust that consumers have with those brands. And the second reason is their sort of distribution channel and distribution and logistics capabilities. So I'm certainly an Amazon Prime customer myself. And so it's not uncommon for most days, certainly since the pandemic, for me to receive a parcel of one type or another from Amazon. And we acknowledge that consumers like that trust and that expedient delivery. So whilst we can offer it ourselves on a direct consumer basis, for those customers who we're trying to attract and introduce Hotter to, we found that the likes of those large global marketplaces absolutely perform a role for our business.
What's your experience of turning somebody who is a marketplace first customer into a Hotter first customer in the future?
Ian, that's definitely the holy grail. So ideally, we prefer as brands to manage our end-to-end customer experience. That said, the ability to convert and migrate a marketplace customer to be your own brand customer is a little challenging. I'm sure some of you brands have found some successful methods to achieve it. That said, we can't intercept or acquire that customer data for obvious legislative reasons. Therefore, whilst they receive a fabulous pair of shoes and hopefully a wonderful, good quality and comfortable shoe that they're happy with, we're not then able to target those consumers in the same way that we would if we knew and had our own data on them. So for me, it's about making sure that brand experience is appropriate and then looking to see essentially using those marketplaces somewhat as an advertising platform and a forum to try and introduce them to your storefront within the marketplace, and B, if possible, try and get them to come to your own store. So it's we've not cracked it, but definitely it's a key focus of ours.
Is there a difference in how you manage the stores and the capabilities you have on each? And if so, what are the strengths and weaknesses from your perspective of both approaches?
So I think from a strategic perspective, we try to ensure that we present the Hotter brand through a storefront environment like what we've got on eBay. We actually do have the same storefront on Amazon. That said, the search functionality and your ability to find your own brand is often a little bit more challenging on the Amazon platform, I believe, because it's so vast. And whilst Hotter has its own storefront and products sold on Amazon, many other resellers of Hotter products are more likely to appear on the Amazon brand. And that's where the sort of gallery or gridded view is something that's seen. So strategically, we don't differentiate between the marketplaces in terms of how we wish to present our brand. What we do differentiate is our price and product proposition. So eBay for us is much more about product retirement, and certainly where we're able to appeal to a more bargain hungry consumer. Whereas Amazon, we share and sell our current season stock for the same current season price. All of our marketplace strategic intent considers the geographical reach and the customer demographic of those brands. And that, for example, is where we've decided to somewhat differentiate eBay as slightly more discount driven and older product, and then Amazon and some of the other marketplaces we partner with our sort of best and current offer. So as RetailX has confirmed, over 50% of all traffic touches a marketplace at any point. So it would be remiss of many brands to not choose to partner with some of the key marketplaces. Zalando has been a core target of ours for quite some time. It is huge, as we all know, but it equally dominates in mainland Europe, disproportionate to where some of the other marketplaces over-index in different countries. Zalando did not approach us, we approached them. Then we agreed that we would work together, and unfortunately the pandemic hit and things slowed down somewhat for obvious macro environmental reasons. The integration itself, I'm absolutely disappointed that we're not yet live, and I think it's been a lot harder than we would have anticipated. And I guess one of the considerations is, how do we best integrate, and who drives the answer? Is it the marketplace or is it the brand? Certainly the marriage of the technology that we have in terms of our data feeds and Zalando's has caused the delay, and that's our fault. That's not Zalando's fault. But certainly I think that for brands like us who want to expand through marketplaces, it's best to find a technological solution such that we can plug and play, which I know is the ecom mantra. So it's taken longer than we would have hoped. That said, once we've set ourselves up for Zalando, the capability then to explore other marketplace opportunities is really viable. So we personally partner with Channel Advisor. So they help us to structure our data, structure our feeds, and ensure that we're in a position where it ought to be a core effort for the first one, and then some iterations for any technical changes, whether it's currency or price information that those guys need. So Hotter's business goal is of course to deliver growth and expansion. So the core business is UK followed by US. What we're seeking to undertake is expansion into Europe, and that expansion into Europe we will look to achieve ourselves with our own Euro currency website. However, we're looking to supplement our approach in direct consumer Europe with some international marketplaces. So there are others we're considering, including Allegro, which I know is spoken about in the current article. So there are many other marketplaces out there. What I don't wish to do is to, excuse the language, but prostitute the brand. So the channels of distribution, we want to partner with those guys who can fulfill a gap that, or an opportunity that we feel is better served through a marketplace rather than core investment ourselves. We may well use marketplaces to test the appetite in those markets, and then should it get a decent response, then consider a improved direct consumer relationship. So the Hotter brand is direct consumer led, and marketplaces will be up to 10% of our turnover. So there's no point in partnering with these guys if it isn't a mutually beneficial commercial relationship. And I think the power of the marketplaces often diminishes the opportunity for brands like ourselves to negotiate. And it's about making sure that the decision that we're making is one that is going to be a commercially viable solution. The great thing that I would suggest with marketplaces is use them with your bestsellers. However, don't give away your crown jewels. So I wouldn't necessarily say explode your entire product catalogue of inventory. Instead, be very selective about what you're trying to do. With regards to the watch for and the pitfall, don't overpromise to your board about delivery dates, because you're only in control of what you can do. And certainly, whilst the marketplace's tech teams are very agile, they're obviously talking to many, many people. So I think be realistic about the timescales. It doesn't seem to be quite as easy as the initial conversations that take place suggest.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Talk about a lucid articulation of a business in growth as well as transition to marketplaces. So we covered a lot of things there in those few minutes about how to own your customer, how the marketplace ranges need to fit in with what you're offering, as well as the challenge, just frankly put, of getting and owning customer data when the route to you has been through a marketplace. And also, Sean, picking up on the point you were making earlier on about the move to Zalando. So let me just ask about the data side first. How big an issue is it, do you think, Emma, when you have a marketplace that you don't own the customer, the marketplace does? What are the approaches to wrapping that customer in love and making your site their first port of call next time?
Sure. Well, I guess firstly, it's finding marketplaces to work with who offer you a degree of visibility into the data that they're collecting. So different marketplaces offer different levels of visibility and different levels of account management. So if it's Amazon, a lot of sellers say it sometimes can be a little bit like talking to a brick wall because there's not as much of a feedback loop that you can generate. But certainly with other marketplaces, you mentioned Zalando, and a lot of the marketplaces that I work with at Miracle, one of the key things that we really enforce is that, or not enforce, wrong word, but to really highlight as an important thing to do is you should treat your sellers as your customers. They are another type of customer, and sharing with them much feedback and crucially that important data around what customers want, what traffic looks like, what conversion looks like, what's working, what's not working. The more of that a marketplace can share with a seller, you're empowering that seller to be better for your business. So it's in everyone's best interest ultimately to create that feedback loop of sharing data and having that visibility. It's not always possible or scalable with every seller and every marketplace, but there's certainly an important aspect of partnering as closely as you can with the marketplaces that you work with to ensure you can access that a certain level of data. And of course, that helps your marketplace business as well. But as a brand, you can then take some of that learning and apply that back to your own business as well. So it's kind of a win-win situation.
And so, Sean, one of the other interesting things that came out of Victoria's comments is the need to manage different stock feeds, different stock inventories, descriptions, presentation across multiple marketplaces. So a very significant increase in complexity. How would you suggest people manage their presence on multiple marketplaces?
Yeah, certainly Hotter is one of Channel Advisor's customers, but when you're operating online, whether it's just through your own website or it's across one or two marketplaces, at that point, it's relatively, depending on the volume of sales that you're doing, it can be manageable. It's when people have these expansion plans and massive growth plans, that's when the kind of creaks start to appear and cracks in the process in terms of inventory management across the different platforms, especially as a consumer. If you go to a particular marketplace, you never want to see a product that's out of stock. It's very disheartening. It's frustrating, and it leads to a lot of cart abandonment, or maybe the customer goes elsewhere and they buy from somewhere else. So that's always a key consideration for brands, is to avoid going out of stock in these particular platforms. And to do so at scale, you need to have a system in place or a platform in place that can accurately and efficiently send the right information to all the various parties that you're selling with, and that it's coordinated and synchronized to your back-end systems. So of course that's something at Channel Advisor that we do, but I know there's some brands out there today that may be able to do it themselves, but if they're looking to expand and really push into further territories, we mentioned Poland or the US, it's got to be at the forefront of their minds, because the first impression is key. If they go into a new territory and for some reason they're not showing accurate stock levels, or the content or the images are slightly misaligned, it just leads to a poor experience for the consumer, and they're likely to go elsewhere. So first impressions make a massive difference in this particular space. And I think you're
we're all guilty of it today.
I think that they're going to be a generation of children who, instead of being named after pop stars or influencers, are actually just called "Sorry, you're on mute." I predict now that is going to be the name of 2022. Thank you very much, Sean. Now, we've talked a bit about going from me, the brand, pushing myself out to the marketplaces, but I thought it'd be nice, Em, if I put you on the spot and talk a bit more about how I can become a marketplace myself. So I'm going to put you into the position of presenting power, and we will just have just a quick intro to how the seller can become the marketplace themselves. So maybe just take us through briefly, Emma, the next slide or two. That'd be most appreciated.
Sure, no problem. So yes, so we've put together at Miracle our seller report to answer some of the questions we get a lot, which is, who are marketplace sellers? Who are these mystical, magical sellers, and what are they doing? And the short answer is that they're a very large and very diverse bunch. And if we think about Amazon and Etsy, two very different platforms with two very different types of value proposition and different customer base, they both have a huge number of sellers on their platforms. And so Amazon, the sellers we typically see there, they're a mix of resellers and brands. For Etsy, it's a lot of smaller businesses and emerging brands. Of course, there will be some overlap, but generally there's quite a large difference between the sellers on these two marketplaces. And this is typical of what we see of many of the marketplaces that are emerging or have established themselves in the UK and throughout Europe. But what's interesting beyond the type of seller out there is the super fast growth that we're seeing of these marketplace sellers. An interesting fact, there are many investment houses and private equity firms investing in Amazon sellers, but also in smaller independent brands, especially direct-to-consumer brands, and more digitally native sellers too. And the expectation of these investors is that there is a big opportunity for growth. So I hear a question.
No, I was just going to say that a quick cross-promotional plug for our sister title, tamebay.com, which has been looking and profiling the people who've got relatively small businesses as retailers, big if you're a seller, who are now being acquired and getting investment. So that's a very hot topic, Emma, that you've raised, and we cover that on TameBay. So just a little plug there.
Fantastic. TameBay's fantastic resource. So we have just over 300 Miracle marketplaces operating today. And we're seeing that more and more of the sellers now that are growing their marketplace businesses, they're e-commerce pure players and emerging brands, but they're also the very well-known brands that we all are shopping with today. So a nice example in the UK, Jo Malone, they're a seller selling on the Feel Unique marketplace, which is a large luxury, Jo Malone, a huge luxury brand in perfume and cosmetics, and Feel Unique is a marketplace for cosmetics, beauty, and that whole world. And another great example in the UK is the Friends of Jules marketplace. And that's attracted some really great British brands, such as Cox & Cox, who are a furniture and homeware seller, and a women's accessory brand called Tiliana. And interestingly, one of Joules' marketplace sellers, Garden Trading, were actually acquired by Joules earlier, a couple of months ago. So it's showing how business models are evolving, and traditionally someone who is a seller is becoming part of a mono brand who's now becoming a retailer. So all these lines of who is a seller and who is a marketplace, this is all really, really evolving, which is pretty cool.
But again, excuse me for being slightly old and old-fashioned here, but this is not dissimilar conceptually to the department stores when they were making big strides in the noughties to go online. And Sean, I'm thinking about the growth of dropship and the work that Channel Advisor did back in the noughties when the conversation was, hello brand, would you like to be on House of Fraser, Debenhams, wherever? Give us the feed and we will feature you. Then we had the extended range as the dropship. So what is, if any, the difference between being on a marketplace and being with a department store or other aggregator of traffic and brands? Sean, is there a difference here, or are we basically just taking the 20s version of the noughties department store?
There's probably the two big differences are the purchase of record and also who holds the stock. So generally, from a dropship perspective, the stock isn't held by the marketplace. It might be held by the brand themselves, and they receive information off that order and fulfill it. A lot of people, in some respects, are moving away from that because it's an expense to hold that stock, and they prefer to almost ship that out and give it to the marketplace or someone else. But it's a tug of war at the moment for a lot of brands in trying to decipher which is the best strategy. But I think there is no one clear-cut answer. I think it's a hybrid approach depending on where that brand is and what's been offered to them by platforms like Joules, which has been incredibly successful. And then I suppose, depending on where that brand is located as well and where they've got their stock in, and if they can fulfill, it makes sense from a dropship perspective. And then from a marketplace perspective, if you want to outsource almost everything in terms of customer acquisition and, brand awareness, that can all be done by the marketplaces themselves, depending whether you're going down first-party route or third-party route with them. If that answers your question.
It does. I'm just thinking, Martin, that we have some more work to do to try and work out where is the stock rather than just where is the product listing being marketed and offered. So if anyone does have any suggestions for how Martin and his team can get a definitive answer, please don't keep it yourself. We are all ears. And so we'd welcome that. Great. I interrupted your flow there, I'm afraid. So let's just go back to your comments. And having looked at the enterprise ones, you had a further point.
Yeah, so we are seeing that there are more and more brands who are digitally native brands, and those that are kind of born for marketplaces. They're becoming the marketplace natives because their businesses have been built around selling on marketplaces, really taking that fantastic traffic that other retailers and bigger brands may have, and really harnessing that to grow their businesses. We've seen this huge rise of many brands joining marketplaces now as sellers, and this is the fastest growing segment we see of sellers, of the 50,000 plus sellers that we have within the Miracle ecosystem. A good example, Burberry are a seller on Harvey Nichols in the UK. Adidas sell on Afound, one of H&M's marketplaces. In the US, we have a marketplace called Madewell, and they sell Birkenstock and New Balance. So all of these very well-known brands that we're all shopping with are finding new homes on different marketplaces.
And I love the idea as well that Harvey Nichols has a marketplace in which global brands play a part. Again, maybe we've been doing this for too long, but if you think back 20 years, the whole discussion was, I would never tarnish my brand by going anywhere near a marketplace. Whereas now, the customer has spoken, and all of these forms are kind of merging or demerging, and the distinctions are no longer cut and dried.
Exactly.
Great. Well, look, we have covered off so many things, and I'm also going to put a little plug for our DMVB work. We have a 6-part series we're putting together called Stream, which is looking at the growth in direct-to-consumer brands, particularly the digitally native vertical brands. So more about that once we finish the filming for it. But now, while we're all together, just to wrap up on our time, what do we think is the next big thing to think about in marketplaces? So not what's going to happen, but in the board meeting next week, marketplaces on the agenda. What should we be saying to the board that we should be doing to engage with, exploit, run away from, launch, whatever? Marketplace is the topic. Sean, what would you have as the next line that you're presenting to the board about marketplaces?
I think from looking at the reports and what Martin shown earlier on today, there's no getting away from marketplaces. There's significant volume there. And if a brand is going to launch on a marketplace, I think the next key consideration is brand awareness, or how do they advertise themselves and get themselves visible and known. There's a lot of noise on these marketplaces, a lot of competitors, a lot of other brands. And it's imperative for them to invest the time to consider how do they position themselves on the marketplace, whether that's enrolling in marketplace promotions or it's committing a certain budget on a monthly rolling basis, or whether it's creating a brand store to some effect. But it's definitely something that brands need to consider to stand out amongst the crowd, I would say.
Okay, that's a nice one. So it's not an if, it's not a when, it's just sharpen those elbows and get yourself seen. So marketers are going to be cheered. Emma, marketplace is the topic. What should the board be discussing?
Well, I would say whether you're a seller, a brand, or an operator of a marketplace, the first line I would say is it's now or never. We can see that the marketplace model is the place to be for retailers, for brands, for so many different types of operators, whether it's B2B or B2C. Ultimately, the marketplace model gives you so much flexibility and opportunity to take lots of risks, but do it in a very safe and careful way. And why not? We've had a massive year and a half, almost 2 years of dramatic change across the world. So now is the time to probably be a little bit bold and future-proof ourselves for the next, hopefully not for the next one.
Hopefully not. So I love that. Be bold, take risks, but in a safe way. An anthem for our times that our children who are called, sorry, I'm on mute, can sing. Martin, you've hardly finished the research, but we're already into next year's. So as you look forward to deploying the RetailX research pixies, where are you going to be focusing for the coming year? What's the thing that's attracted your research eye?
So one of the key things that we will be building and that we are building into our performance indicators, not just in the brand specific reports, but across the board, is where a brand is being sold on a marketplace, but doesn't have control of that, or does have control of that, to get that information through, to see how successful perhaps third-party resellers are, and to contrast that to the brand's own efforts to sell their own label products. And the more successful they are, the better the ranking signal in the index.
Great. So again, it's interesting how this is a complex area, that deals with platforms, logistics, delivery, the full cycle of commerce, but yet the considerations keep coming back to the customer, brand experience, and the nuts and bolts of effective selling. So I think that's very interesting. Well, our time is at an end. Thank you for the questions. I hope we've managed to weave all of those in. But if you're left with anything unasked, then drop us a note, research@retailx.net. But for now, I hope you enjoy the report. You'll get an email with details of the download link. And I should point out that all of the charts in the report are available as high-res graphics if you want to create your own Christmas cards, share with friends, or simply use to decorate your next report. You're welcome. But we can't leave without thanking you all for spending some time with us today, and also to Emma, Sean, and Martin for giving us not only their time, but the benefit of their insights as well. So thank you all, everyone. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. And from the studio, it's a goodbye and happy trading.
Thank you.
Thank you.